Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, January 30th, 2026. I'm Ed Kavik, November 2, Echo Charlie. In the log this week, we'll have a contest spotlight for the North American SSB Sprint happening this weekend. Also, we'll talk about the ARRL Atlantic Division Director being declared ineligible for office. We'll have a Desecheo DXpedition update. We'll talk about MVARC's Winter Field Day with a recap. Also, MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and we'll take a look at some interesting online radio content. As always, links to all reference content can be found in the show notes or at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. This weekend brings the latest edition of the North American SSB Sprint. This contest starts at 0 UTC on Sunday, February 1st, that's 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, and goes until 3:59 UTC on Sunday, that's 10:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. The objective of the contest is for North American stations to make as many contacts as possible, and for non-North American stations to contact as many North American stations as is possible. One feature of the contest that makes this one a bit different is the QSY rule that makes it a sprint, which stipulates that any station that calls CQ, says QRZ, or says going up 5, or something to that effect to solicit a contact, needs to change frequency at least 1 kilohertz after the completion of that contact. Essentially, you can't stay on a single frequency and make more than one single contact if you're calling CQ. The exchange for the contest is the other station's call sign, your sequential serial number starting with 1, your name, and your location, which is a state, province, or country, with DX for outside of North American stations. So, if I was contacting K4US for my 40-second QSO, my exchange would be Kilo 4 United Sierra, November 2 Echo Charlie, 42 Ed Victor Alpha. Participants can enter as QRP, that's 5 watts or less, low power, 100 watts or less, or high power, 1500 watts or less. The contest is limited to 20, 40, and 80 meters, with suggested frequencies between 14200 and 14275 kilohertz, 7125 to 7225 kilohertz, and 3700 to 3825 kilohertz, but they do ask that you stay out of the DX window from 3790 to 3800 kilohertz. The multipliers are U.S. states, Canadian provinces, and North American countries listed in the rules. DX doesn't count as a multiplier, but does count for QSO points. Logs must be submitted within 7 days of the event, and Cabrillo format is preferred. This should be a fun contest to test your skills and get a bunch of contacts to the log. More information can be found at ssbsprint.com. Good luck. In a bulletin to members sent on January 28, 2026, the American Radio Relay League announced that Atlantic Division Director Robert Famiglio, K3RF, was made ineligible to remain in his elected position due to him not signing a recertification of the, quote, board member statement on authority, responsibility, and expectations that had been added to the ARRL bylaws, Section 46D, last year in the July 2025 board meeting. In a separate communication from Robert Famiglio, he wished to make it clear that he is not resigning, but, quote, being removed without his consent by the application of the new Code of Conduct rules passed in July of 2025. Famiglio, who is also a lawyer, believes that the new rules, quote, now limit or prohibit a director's ability to advise his division of matter involving important board decisions without advance permission. He continues that his, quote, interpretation of the new rules and required confidentiality agreement and that of other lawyers that he has consulted contradicts his obligations under Connecticut law to ARRL members. He adds that he, quote, cannot in good conscience sign the new director's oath of confidentiality that is now demanded by the new bylaws. As a result of his removal as director, Marty Newingham, AG3I, the previous vice director for the Atlantic section, has assumed the role as Atlantic Division Director. In an update on their website on January 28th, the KP5/NP3VI DXpedition announced that they had made over 43,000 QSOs with over 10,700 unique call signs in 123 DXCC entities. They have been working through the challenges of operating the station remotely under renewable battery power. They state that low power and efficiency are key to their operations. Band choices will follow real-time propagation, and adjustments will be made as necessary. They plan to continue operations in CW, SSB, and digital. They've also been posting provisional schedules for modes and targets on their website at Desecheo2026.com/KP5. Good luck. Last Saturday, the Mount Vernon Amateur Radio Club operated Winter Field Day in Alexandria, Virginia as K4US. We were a 2 Oscar station, so that's 2 transmitters outdoors. And despite temperatures in the morning of 12 degrees Fahrenheit, we had a great turnout. The club was hosted by club president Corey, KN4YZY, and his wife, who made sure that everyone felt welcome and had plenty of warm food and drink. Ed, November 2 Echo Charlie, of the third person, brought a double-sized ice fishing hut and a diesel heater to allow for the operating team to have a warm shelter that got up to the mid-80s during the event. We made 58 contacts on CW and 73 on single sideband for a total of 131 QSOs, including the first HF contact ever for a new operator who joined us. We operated primarily on the 15 and 20 meter bands using the N2EC Versahex antenna and a Chelligans MC750 attached to an ICOM 7100 and a Yaesu FT991A. We decided to call it a day in the late afternoon as the severe snow event was barreling down on the eastern half of the United States, and we wanted to make sure that everyone got home safe and sound. Thanks to everyone who joined in the fun to help us set up, get on the air, socialize, and take down the station. It was an absolute blast. And now let's take a look at some MVARC Nets on the air. As always, we've got our 2-meter FM net Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the repeater, and that is immediately followed with the 2-meter digital net on Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM. On the weekends, we've got the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable, Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 megahertz CW, and that is followed at 8:30 a.m. by the Cherry Tree Net on sideband on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you're always welcome to join us. Now let's take a look at what is happening with DX. As always, there will be a lot of DX on the air this week. Stations on the air include St. Kitts, Rwanda, Guadalupe, Tanzania, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Desecheo Island, South Sudan, Solomon Islands, Colombia, and Antarctica. A calendar of DXpeditions can be found at dxnews.com/calendar. And now it's time for a solar activity update. As we go to press, the Solar Flux Index, or SFI, was 129, and the estimated sunspot number was 135, with 9 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI has decreased. Solar activity has been at low levels in the last 24 hours. The geomagnetic field has been at quiet to minor storm levels, and the KP index reached 4 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 781 kilometers per second. Solar activity is predicted to be at low levels with a slight chance of M-class flares today through Sunday. The geomagnetic field is forecast to be at quiet to active levels today, at quiet to unsettled levels on Saturday, and at quiet levels on Sunday. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is at 1% today through Sunday. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are unlikely in the near term, with a predicted probability of 15% today and 10% on Saturday and Sunday. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 1% chance predicted today through Sunday. There's a chance of 6-meter propagation, so keep an eye on the band and the spotting clusters to be ready for the next time the Magic Band does its thing. It remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see D-layer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, visit the NOAA DRAP page to see real-time max musical frequency, or MUF, and critical frequency, or FOF2 information from RadioSon data. Visit prop.kc2g.com. And now a quick look at some upcoming contests. This weekend brings the Feld Hell Sprint, the UBA DX contest on SSB, the North American SSB Sprint we mentioned earlier, the Marconi Club ARI Luano Slow CW QSO Party, and the real-time contest. As always, the K1USN, SSTs, MSTs, and CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now let's wrap things up with some interesting online radio content. As always, all the links for everything we're talking about here can be found in the show notes and at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. The Long Island CW Club has a presentation about the CW journey of its members. Dugbo KD7DUG gets QRP DX to Japan with a straight key from a mountain. Cyprian, Yankee Oscar 6, Delta X-Ray Echo, shows off his new spy transceiver with just 3 transistors. Duff WA7BFN gives another edition of the Long Island CW Club podcast with the NAQP, Arduino programming, DXpeditions, and AI. Mike K at MRD gives us a tour of his ham shack. Peter, VK3YE's tin can transmitter is heard 2,500 kilometers away. Matt M0DQW shows off his desktop SSTV receiver system. John AE5X does winter field day from Florida by motorcycle. Mike K at MRD saves an old Kenwood HT from a trash bin and shows it to us. Walt K4OGO daydreams about a 100-watt Jaeger rig he wishes would exist. Fact Quickie talks about why circuit boards are generally green. Column M0XXT builds a vertical from scrap materials and gets it on the air. Kevin 2E0 Whiskey Mike Golf shows how amateur radio and kayaking are, quote, a match made in heaven. Craig KM6LYW talks about the MeshCore messaging platform. Jeff KF0MYB takes a look at the portable NERSI oscilloscope. Steve KM9G looks at a flexible solar panel setup for his portable operations. Rob N1NUG asks us to be kind and helpful in our interactions with newer operators. George VK2AOE does round 2 of his Tasmanian portable operations. Save it for parts. Test Faraday bags for RF isolation. Matt M0DQW tests out the M-Lite 880 portable receiver. Mike K8MRD builds an inexpensive link dipole. And TJ K9KJ talks about working DXpeditions and using Clublog to find if you're in their log. Well, that is it for this week. I've been Ed Kadick, November 2 Echo Charlie. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We hope you have a great week ahead. Best 73, and we look forward to seeing you next week.